Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like now to introduce this evening's guest speaker. Brad Smith is the designer of the Braaap motorcycle and founder of the Braaap business. The business turned over in excess of $1 million in its first year and has gone from strength to strength. Their super concept stores now operate in Melbourne, Launceston, Devonport and Hobart and are expanding into New Zealand and the United States. Braaap has won the Australian Retail Business of the Year 4 times and recently won the Telstra Victorian Business of the Year. Brad is a 2-time winner of the Australian Young Entrepreneur of the Year award and was a runner-up for the International Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He was also the 2010 Young Australian of the Year for Tasmania and is a champion superlight motocross rider. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Brad Smith.
Thank you guys, thank you for having me. I'm a bit excited to be here and I feel honoured that you've invited me to come along and share my story, talk about my journey. And I think the reason that they get someone to come and share their journey is because it's human nature. While I talk about my vision, while I talk about my story and my journey, you think about yours. You think about your vision. I've been asked to share the story on how I took my passion that I had for motorcycles as a young person and how I started a backyard business in high school, and most importantly, how I've taken that backyard business and grown it into an award-winning and a multi-million-dollar company that Braaap is today. I don't say that to impress you guys, not here to impress anyone. But it is my job to use my story to remind us what can happen when we have vision and we have direction. When we have passion, we have persistence. And it's really my job and my mission to impress upon you that growth is the essence of life. The reason I'm obsessed with growth is because in my observation, the areas of our lives that we feel most alive, the areas of our lives that we have most passion, are the areas of our lives where we're making progress, that we're growing. So we're going to talk a little bit about growth. And before I do that, I'm going to share a little bit about my journey, my story, and my family. And I want to point out that I don't come from a rich family. I had no financial head start or kickstart over anyone else. My mum and dad, they grew up in government housing. And while mum and dad couldn't give me a financial kickstart, I do come from an awesome family. And especially my mum, she created a culture of growth in our family. She taught us some great things. And I'll share some of those with you guys. The first thing that mum taught us as kids was the 3 R's. That's respect, respect, and respect. Respect people, respect things, but most importantly, we've got to respect ourselves. And maybe the thing that was instilled in me most with growing up in the family I did was that it was an expectation, it was culture, that whatever we did with absolute passion. We gave it everything we've got. And of course, my passion forever was motorcycling, motocross. I was obsessed with this sport. Since before I could even ride a BMX, I'd be obsessed with motorcycles. And my dad was a motorcyclist, and him and his mates, I'd meet at our place on a Sunday. They'd load up their cars, their vans, their trailers with all their bikes, and they'd go off on an adventure for a day. Then at the end of the day, they'd come back covered in mud and sharing stories about how fast they'd gone, how good they were, the adventure, how much fun it was. And I couldn't wait to be a part of the action. And Dad said to me as a young guy, I'd be nagging him, saying, when can I learn to ride the dirt bike? When can I learn to ride the dirt bike? And of course, my dad said I could learn to ride the motorcycle as soon as I'd mastered the BMX. So my goal for that year became to master the BMX. In our family, goal setting was everything. It was culture. Every week we'd sit down as a family, write down our goals for the next week ahead and review the goals and what we'd done for the week just past. Of course, every New Year's Day, we'd sit down as a family, we'd write down our goals for the next year, we'd assess and review our goals from the year that's just passed. Goal setting was culture. Of course, my goal was to learn to ride this motorcycle. But first I had to prove to Dad that I'd mastered the BMX. So as a young guy, I went about thinking, how can I prove to Dad that I've mastered this BMX? And I thought, I got it. I thought I'd get my little ramp and I'll put it at the bottom of our steep driveway, then I'll lay down 4 cousins. I got a photo here. So that's trust. And you never want to be the 5th cousin. But I learned to ride a motorcycle, no cousins were hurt, and motorcycling became my life. And the reason I share the story is because growing up, somehow everything I learned related back to the motorcycle. For my mum, it was leverage. Do the homework, then you can ride the bike. But most importantly for me, it gave me something that made me hungry, gave me desire, because I wanted to be a better motorcyclist. And it taught me a lot of things. But as I got a little bit older and a little bit better, I started to see that my sport put a lot of pressure on mum and dad, on our family, financially especially. It wasn't cheap to race motocross, especially back then. And one year Mum came to us. She said, we're going to go on a family holiday. She said, we're going to load up our little white Ford Econovan. We're going to drive from Launceston in Tasmania, where I grew up. Going to go to Devonport, catch the Spirit of Tasmania to Melbourne, land in Melbourne, and then drive up to Sydney. We're going to have a road trip. We're going to have an adventure together. So you can imagine my sister, my dad, Mum, we're all loading our stuff into the van, excited to go on a holiday. And then Mum came down and she said, Brad, she said, while we're in Sydney, the Australian junior motocross titles are going to be held. So put your bike in, you're going to get a chance to race at the Nationals, test your skill. So now you can imagine how excited I am. Loading our stuff in, the bikes, and we head off on an adventure. We're going on a road trip. We're a little bit like the Griswoods on tour, but we're having the time of our lives. Heaps of fun. And I remember I was so aware of how hard Mum and Dad had worked, yet we only just made it to Sydney. They pushed so hard, they busted their guts just so we could make it to the event. There's 800 kids who race at the Australian Junior Motocross titles. So you can imagine the vans, the bikes, the trailers, the trucks. You can imagine how big this event is. And we drive in our little white Econovan and we park next to a kid who's got a semi-truck. This kid's got 6 brand new dirt bikes. He's got a mechanic, he's got a coach, he's got a nutritionist. Now, this kid's dad even had a helicopter in the paddock next door. So it's like we parked next to Richie freaking Rich. I just remember walking through the pits and drooling over all the things that these people have. And saying to my mum, how the hell do these people have what they have when I know that you and Dad can't physically work an extra hour in the week, yet we only just made it to the event? Yet Richie Rich and his family, materially and financially, seemed to be under nowhere near the pressure that our family was. And Mum taught me a lesson, stuck with me. She said, Brad, these people, they don't have what they have because they worked harder than us. These people have what they have because they worked smarter than us. I thought, Mum, that's a good one. I wanted to be in a position to make a difference to my family, to myself. I wanted to turn my passion for motocross into my pathway. I thought, I'm going to dedicate myself to working harder at getting smarter so I can get in that position. As a 13-year-old kid, I had no idea where to start. I had no idea what that meant. But I discovered that I needed to learn what I needed to learn in order to become the person I wanted to become. I think that education is the foundation of growth. You don't know what you don't know. We need to learn what we need to learn in order to become the people we wanted to become. So for me, as a 13-year-old kid, I started to read books for the first time, listen to audio tapes, go to seminars, find mentors. Just became possessed by finding what I needed to learn, and then learning what I needed to learn to grow into the person I wanted to become. So the first thing I thought was, I've got to get smart. The second thing I thought was, I've got to get myself in a position so when an opportunity comes my way, I can pounce on that opportunity. I thought that means that I'm going to have to save up some money. So as a young kid, young teenager, I became possessed by doing whatever the hell it took to save up some money so I could not only get in a position, but I could also pounce on that position when an opportunity came my way. So I did whatever the hell I could, stacked shelves for Woolworths, wobbled signs for Domino's Pizza in the gorilla suit. And at 6:36 an hour and 2-hour shifts, I think Mum went backwards every time she took me to work. My favourite one was I mowed all the lawns for all the old ladies in our street. And I loved it because they paid in both money and food. And I felt like I lived on rhubarb pudding for like 3 years. And also had Brad's Big Brand sale. So anytime my family or our friends would come from Tasmania to Melbourne, I'd give them a couple of $100 that I'd saved up, ask them to go to the Melbourne market and buy all the fake t-shirts and jumpers. Then we'd get them back to Tassie, I'd set all the t-shirts and jumpers up in our entrance, ask Mum to invite all her friends around for tea and coffee. Then while the mums are having tea and coffee in the kitchen, I'd be sizing all the kids up for t-shirts in the entrance. It was Brad's Big Brand sale. Just do whatever the hell I could to firstly get smart, get educated, but secondly, get in a position to pounce financially so I could find that opportunity and pounce on it. And the third thing I learned was that I'd have to have some kind of business, some kind of entrepreneurial skills. And again, as a teenage kid, I had no idea what that meant. But I'd always been told that I was kind of entrepreneurial. And the reason was because in grade 5, I had my first entrepreneurial experience. And in grade 5 in primary school, I got given a hacky sack. You know what a hacky sack is? The thing like a little mesh ball full of rice and you kick it around with your friends. And took this thing to school, and the first thing I noticed was that my mates and myself, we had a stack of fun kicking this thing around the schoolyard. It was fun. The second thing I noticed was that in grade 5, not all my mates in grade 5 could afford a $20 hacky sack. They didn't all have a spare $20 lying around to splash out on a hacky sack. So I thought, boom, there's my market. And I called up my nan and said, Nan, could I borrow the sewing machine? Now, I don't know if Nan's ever been so excited or concerned to have her grade 5 grandson want to learn to sew. I said, Nan, could I borrow the sewing machine and would you teach me how to sew hacky sacks? And she was excited. She said, yeah, sure. So every night after school that week, we set up the sewing machine on the kitchen table and we sewed hacky sacks. And I didn't have a manufacturing plant, had a manufacturing plant. I thought I'd take my hacky sacks to school on tuck shop day. Because on tuck shop day, the kids all have a little bit of extra money to splash out on a hacky sack. So you got to picture me. Got my little school uniform on, got my backpack on, got my lunchbox, and I got a bag full of hacky sacks. Sold 20 hacky sacks, $2 profit off each one, $40 in the bank. I'm pumped. But most importantly, I caught the bug. I loved making a product that I enjoyed, my friends enjoyed, made lunchtime more fun, and I loved the feeling of moving towards my goal and my vision every time someone got that experience. And that's really what Braaap is. You know, I love building a motorcycle that I enjoy, my family, my friends, our customers, and I love the feeling that I get of moving towards my goal and my vision every time someone gets that Braaap experience. But you know, I learned that opportunity takes time. You know, especially in a world where we're so used to instant. You know, it's so easy to quit if opportunity doesn't present itself in a day, if it doesn't present itself in a week, a month, or a year. You know, I learned that opportunity takes time because it took 4 years before my opportunity came my way. You know, 4 years at that age as a young teenager of busting my guts, earning money, earning or learning, preparing to pounce while my mates are out playing and mucking around. You know, I learned that opportunity takes time. I think that's a great lesson, especially for our graduates, because the next phase, the next stage of life, persistence pays. Now, learn opportunity takes time, and this opportunity came my way in a new genre, a new category of our sport of motorcycling, of motocross. And what I found was that all my racing idols in America were riding these hotted up bikes, customized bikes that they'd built themselves or from customized parts. And these bikes were worth $15,000 and you couldn't buy them off the showroom floor. I found out that all my favourite riders had one of these things and they'd ride them for fun. And then this is 9 years ago, I found out they were about to have a world championship for this new sport, this new category that was going to be held in Las Vegas with 15,000 fans, $50,000 prize money, and anyone who was anyone was going to turn up and race this thing for fun. And I got so pumped on the sport. The first decision I made was that I was going to do whatever the hell it took to get myself to America by the time I turned 21 and race this race. Now I was 16, so I had plenty of time to worry about getting there. But what really shaped my career and what we do today is that I saw this new category, this new genre of our sport as an opportunity to make motorcycling more accessible and more affordable so more people could experience what I experienced in motorcycling growing up. So if we're going to make this sport accessible and affordable, we've got to find a motorcycle that we can build a sport on the back of. Because these bikes the Americans are riding were custom built and worth $15,000. So we need to find a bike. So I did my research. And I got on the internet, I made calls, met people, just researched. And I found this factory. And this factory is in China. And they promised me that they could build a motorcycle that could compete with the American bikes at the same time as be affordable. So I took all the money I'd spent the last 4 years saving up and I sent it away to the other side of the world to a Chinese manufacturing plant that I still can't pronounce the bloody name of. And I waited. I took out an import approval in my dad's name, signed it in his name because I was too young to get it in my name. And it took 10 weeks for my first 10 bikes to turn up. And I was so excited for these things to turn up because I knew as soon as they got here, we could get started. It was my mission through my sport to help young people get a clean adrenaline rush through activity, through motorcycling, rather than from drugs, crime, or violence. So we set up tracks, we set up coaches, had all the program ready to go. We just needed a bike to build the sport on the back of. Remember the day those first 10 bikes turned up, and it's an exciting day. I couldn't wait. I remember the truck turned up at our driveway, and of course we didn't have a warehouse or a forklift, so I had to unpack them by hand and drag these 10 big boxes down our driveway to the shed that you saw on my picture before at our family home. And have 10 boxes lined up, and I'd ordered our bikes with all black and our logo's pink. And I couldn't wait to show people the branding, the colours, and what we created. So proud to show people. Remember having these 10 boxes with bikes in them lined up. And I opened up the first lid, I looked in, and I saw a yellow motorcycle. I thought we got a problem. The first 10 bikes that turned up were nothing like the 10 bikes I'd ordered. And the 10 bikes that turned up were nowhere near strong enough to hold up to the punishment that we had planned for them. And the first 10 bikes that turned up were only good enough for first-time kid riders to ride. So by the time I'd built trade shows and websites and brochures, it took me a year to find the right owners for the right motorcycle. By the time I'd paid for all that stuff, I'd lost a year and I'd also lost all the money that I'd spent the last 4 years saving up. While I'd lost a year and I'd lost my money, I still hadn't lost my vision. I was possessed by this vision of making our sport more accessible and more affordable. And I thought, if that's going to happen, we need to find a motorcycle manufacturer that believes in my vision, that can build a motorcycle to our exact specs. I thought, if that's going to happen, I've got to save up my money, and as soon as I turn 18, I'm going to get on a plane and go to China and meet these factories face to face. So I did it. I saved. And I remember the day I turned 18, I booked that trip to China. And I got to point out, I was so naive. Never been outside of Tasmania without my family. Never been outside of Australia ever. And I sure as hell couldn't speak Chinese. And I booked my trip. And I remember getting to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong airport's still pretty familiar. It's Western brands, people speak English, it's familiar. But I had to catch a train and a bus 3.5 hours inland to southern China. I remember getting off and being the only person in the town that had peroxide blonde hair and spoke English. And safe to say, I was scared. And I was so naive, I hadn't booked an interpreter or accommodation. And I was so naive, I hadn't also checked out that in the town next door was the world's biggest trade fair. 2 million people were going to be going through this trade fair. So you can imagine how hard it was to find an interpreter or accommodation. And safe to say, I was scared again. And long story short, I found this interpreter. And I asked this man if he would take me to as many motorcycle manufacturing plants as we could find. I said, we've got 2 weeks here in China. Let's go to as many factories as we could find. And at the end of the 2 weeks, we'll choose the best deal. We'll choose the best offer. He said, yeah, sure. He agreed. And I remember walking into that first factory like it was yesterday. And I don't know what picture I had in my mind of what a motorcycle manufacturing plant would look like. But it certainly wasn't this 4-story factory that produced 16,000 motorcycles a month that I was now sitting in, on top of in the penthouse office about to present to a manufacturer that doesn't speak any English. Remember when I met the owner of the manufacturing plant, he put his hands out and I couldn't see fingers from all the gold rings on his hand. And it was like something out of this world to me at that time. And my job was to share this guy my vision and my idea through my interpreter of what we had. I talked about the frame, the engine, the wheels, the suspension, the brakes. Most importantly, I talked about the category and the brand and the concept and how we weren't just building a motorcycle for motorcyclists. We weren't just building another motorcycle. We were building a motorcycle to create new motorcyclists, to create desire in new people, so more people could afford and the sport could be more accessible to more people, to get more people involved in our sport. And at the end of it, he stood up. And through my interpreter, he put his hand on the table and he goes, I love it. He goes, how much money do you have to invest? And of course, I had no money. He said, if you've got no money, what's your engineering experience? How are you going to engineer the motorcycle? And of course, I had no engineering experience. He said, so you got no money, you got no engineering experience, what's your distribution channel? How can you guarantee to me and my factory that this is going to be a worthwhile investment for us to invest in these motorcycles? And as an 18-year-old kid, I had no idea what a distribution channel was. So he laughed me out of his office. He said, I'm not willing to take a risk on an 18-year-old kid who's got no money, no engineering experience, no distribution channel, and an 18-year-old kid who's so naive, he's got no idea how much it costs to produce and manufacture a motorcycle. To give you guys an example, the plastics, you can see on the bike there, the front guard, the side guard, the plastic parts on the motorcycle. Before you actually get to touch the plastics, just for the molding and the design costs, $100,000. Let alone the wheels, the frame, the engine, the suspension, all the things you need to make a motorcycle a motorcycle. So the second, the third, the fourth and the fifth factory laughed me out of their office. And I thought I could come home and people would understand. People would understand that I've gone to China, I'm a young guy, I've tried my hardest, I've given it my best shot, and things just didn't work out. The 10th, the 20th, the 30th, the 40th, the 50th factory laughed me out of their office. I thought I could come home and people wouldn't just understand. People would probably congratulate me. Because I've been to China, I've given it my best shot, I've tried my hardest, I've done something a bit different, and it just didn't work out. But I use my story to remind us that sometimes giving it our best shot, trying our hardest, is a restriction on making it happen. I didn't go to China to come home and be congratulated for trying to build a motorcycle. I went there to come home with a motorcycle. I said to my interpreter, I said, how many manufacturing plants in China have the tooling required to build the componentry we need to build the motorcycle we want to build? He said, there's 800. I said, we're not coming home until 801 of these factories have laughed us out of their office. And my Chinese interpreter got very good at saying next factory in Chinese, in English. Persistence pays, persistence is power. Who would have thought after 50 factories had told me that I was naive, 50 factories had told me I didn't have the money, didn't understand the business, didn't understand the country, was too young. 50 factories had told me I should go home and this wasn't going to happen. Who would have thought I'd run into 2 young French guys? 2 young French guys have just moved to China from France with financial backing and a vision, an idea, a mission to start a niche motorcycle manufacturing plant. 2 young French guys have come to China with the money to start the plant. They needed some vision. 2 young French guys who needed an idea. 2 young French guys who needed to take a risk on someone. 2 young French guys who became my perfect partners. Persistence pays. Persistence is the difference between giving it our best, trying our hardest, and actually making it happen. Persistent till. But that's my story. And I'm proud to say that the race I described to you guys earlier in Las Vegas, just this year, we became the first production bike in history to win back-to-back world championships of that race in Las Vegas. We're the only motorcycle on the planet that builds its bike to a tolerance and has a program where we can offer a lifetime warranty on its motorcycle. And the thing that makes me most proud is that in 2013, we taught over 1,000 kids how to ride a motorcycle for the first time. So they could get a clean adrenaline rush through motorcycling, through activity, rather than from drugs, crime, and violence. Persistence pays. And while I use my story, I really use it as a metaphor to remind us that growth is the essence of life. The thing with growth is that it happens whether we like it or not. My obsession, my question's been, how do we take control of growth? How do we create deliberate growth and grow in the direction of our visions? The thing I always talk about when I speak about growth is that some people say it's different. And some people say it's different for me because I'm passionate about what I do. It's different for me because I love what I do in motorcycles. But I remind those people that my passion is to ride my motorcycle. I love to ride my dirt bike. I don't get to do that every day, every week, sometimes every month. I'm not passionate about bookkeeping, accounting, hiring, firing, warehousing, shipping, engineering, all the things that I do day to day. And you might not be either. But I'm passionate about how I do them. I'm passionate about the person I become while I do them. I'm passionate about the standards I hold myself to while I do them. And I'm passionate about doing whatever I did yesterday a little bit better today. I don't think that passion is an activity as much as it is an attitude. Passion doesn't come from what we do, it comes from how we do it. Passion comes from progress, doing it a little bit better today than what we did yesterday. I think we're the most privileged generations in history. We live in the most privileged time in history. We wear clothes we didn't sew. We got here on roads we didn't build, in cars we didn't make. We talk on phones we didn't invent. We are the most privileged time in history. No other time in history has a standard week's wage got us a ticket on an aeroplane to anywhere in the world we want to go. No other time in history has someone spent $100 million to produce a movie that we pay $15 to be entertained by. We are the most privileged generations in history. No other time in history has someone done all this stuff for us. No other time in history have we been able to live local and compete global. No other time in history have we been able to live and benefit from being a small rural town like we do here, where you matter, where people care, at the same time as being connected to the rest of the world, or be a couple of hours from a major city or a major airport. We're the most privileged generation in history. I think we're only restricted by our ability to think. We're only restricted by our ability to take action. And most importantly, we're only restricted by our ability to persist, to stick to it. There's one other thing I'll share with you guys before I go, and that is that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter what stage of life or what your career path, at some point, everyone wants to quit. Do you think that Michael Jordan would have wanted to quit when the high school basketball team, they dropped him because he lacked ability? How about Walt Disney? Do you think he would have wanted to quit when the local newspaper, they sacked him because he lacked imagination? Or how about Steve Jobs? Do you think he would have wanted to quit when the people he employed, the people he hired to run his company, grow his company, his baby, Apple, they sacked him? At some point, everyone wants to quit. The secret is don't. Stick to it. Persist. And I use tonight as a challenge to challenge you to think about your vision. If you're a teacher, if you're a leader, if you're a parent, and most importantly for yourself, to challenge yourself and the people around you to think about their vision, document their vision. Who do you want to become? Where do you want to go? What value are you going to add? I think vision is power. So thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
What an interesting young man. Brad, you're not going to get away quite yet. This is a photo we haven't seen at the other graduations, and I did ask him to produce a photo so we could understand what he was talking about. So my questions are, why is the bike so special when you say a lifetime guarantee, as against others?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is we do a range of bikes, from street legal, kids, dirt bikes, all that kind of stuff. But most importantly, with our lifetime guarantee, we're the manufacturer. So we know the tolerances. If it's got our name written on it and something happens to it, it breaks, we're going to fix it anyway. So we used to do this. We've been doing this for 9 years. But 5 years ago, we decided to offer a lifetime warranty because we realized that if anything broke, we would fix it anyway, because it's our pride, it's our brand, it's who we are. So that's the biggest thing, is you deal directly with the manufacturer. So it's been a pretty interesting journey in building all these systems to back the motorcycle up.
And secondly, my understanding is that you actually almost became world champion. Is that right?
Well, my teammate won the world championship, so I was on the same bike as me. I got 4th last year, which was my best, but he definitely world class, and he won the championship for us, which was awesome.
How long are these races?
12 minutes.
So it's based on time?
We all start at the same time, so we do about 20 laps, all start at the same time, and it's an arena a bit like Rod Laver Arena, so it's a really tight track. It's a bit like BMX on steroids, so pretty cool.
I think I can feel the steroids here. And the fact that you're actually flying out from Australia, from Melbourne early tomorrow, can you tell us a little about the trade fair you're going to?
Yeah, for sure. This weekend's an exciting weekend for us. The French guys that have been our partners and our great friends, family friends, on the 15th of April become our arch rivals. So we now have our own factory in China. Our engines come from Japan. Our frames come from France, European exhaust, Canadian suspension, a lot of Australian parts. But obviously for the rest of the world in distribution, we have to send everything to China to put in the right box and do macro assembly. Then we do local assembly for the final assembly portion. So this weekend on Sunday, we launch our whole new range of motorcycles at the world's biggest trade fair, which is held in China this year, where distributors from all around the world come to look for new products. So it's really exciting for us. And a few things we've developed, which I think is exciting for rural Australia and most importantly Victoria and Tasmania, is that we built all our motorcycles, our concept bikes, here in Victoria and Tasmania. So for example, it normally takes 3 months and costs $250,000 to build a concept bike. Through the art of 3D printing and some magic from some of the guys that helped us with their 3D printing, we've built a motorcycle from the ground up in 4 weeks, and it cost us about $4,000 to print in plastic as a concept through 3D printing. And the rest of our range has been built in Tasmania from conventional like clay moulding, foam moulding, and that kind of thing. So it's really exciting to be using that kind of technology that has helped us accelerate our process, make it way more affordable, and get us on the world stage this weekend to show the world our new motorcycles.
Well, you can't help but be inspired by a young 26-year-old Australian who was challenged by his mother, first of all, about respect, who was given the opportunity to participate in his favourite pastime, who had a passion, persistence, but recognised that he had an opportunity to do a lot for others. At the same time, being well paid and developing a very rewarding business, both financially and otherwise. Brad, we've been very privileged to have you speak to each of our graduation ceremonies. You certainly are an inspiring young man, and I think many of us, in fact I'd say all of us, are going to follow the development of Braaap around the world, but particularly in Australia, much more closely. Would you please acknowledge Brad's address?